Okay, I'm attempting to do something here I've not done. I'm using both cameras. I'm going to attempt to do some picture-in-picture maybe, because this is going to be difficult to work on this and show it. Been looking for a miniature for a member of our party. He's a race known as the Kindred, who are a native people who have become kind of really close to nature and can shift into different forms, and as they go up in levels their forms get more powerful. And he has taken a tiger-like form. Tiger was one of his first animal forms, so he's also, instead of just being a fighter, he's taken some levels as a martial artist. So he fights with his claws, bare hands mostly. You can see what I've got going on here. I've done a little bit more since I first started and posted about it, but a little bit of work on the back, a little bit of work, and got some red off of my ink there. A little bit of detailing, not much yet. I want to bulk him up. He's a pretty stout character. He's the brick of the group. We've got a 4-man party we're playing with. Let me fix this camera a little bit and adjust some things. You can see I've got measured off here. He's roughly 45 millimeter at this height. That is his head. Really, he's going to be about 50 millimeter tall, but he's a large creature. We really like that. So what we're going to do is we're going to basically bulk him up a little bit more, sculpt in some more details in the body, and then we'll start putting some clothing and stuff onto him and kind of flesh him out a little bit. And we're going to get right back to that. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm using Sculpting. Let me get you out some wide angle here. Alright, and this is what I've got. It's just this Super Sculpey firm. There you go. And you're going to see a lot of this upside down or blocked vision on the other camera here. Super Sculpey firm, and it comes in a nice big block, and I've just barely cut a corner out of it here, not much. What I'm doing is I've got this block and I've just been working it and getting it a little bit workable. Now I started by taking some wire. Now what I did is I bought some cheap I guess it's floral wire or maybe jewelry wire. I'm not sure. It's just simple low gauge wire. I got some 22 and some 26. 22 for framework, 26 for wrap. This is more economical for me than to buy the little pre-made dollies that you can get from Reaper and a couple other companies. They make these little skeletons or almost muscular dollies that you can bend and shape. And plus I wanted a large creature. We're doing so that he takes up a little more space than a standard miniature. Let's see if you can get a good look at that there. He's we'll do another shot with this camera here with it zoomed out so that you can see some of the detail I'm working on. You can see I've started putting in some shape into the shoulders and playing with the biceps and muscles on the arms. Some of the muscles in the back, I'm playing around with the glutes. I've got one calf trying to go here. I'm not sure how I'm going to do the feet and the hands yet. Probably detachable and glue them at the end. But this Super Sculpey is nice. It's a baking polymer clay. And I can bake it when I get to a certain point. That's why I use the wire to fill it up and give some gap. They say you can do aluminum foil too. Something that you're not, I mean, it's only $2.75. It's not going to burn up right away. Nothing's really going to catch fire. But you don't want any real air bubbles in it either, so you want to really pack your clay into this armature real good before you really get to working on fleshing out what you're doing here. And so I'm going to try to work with this. I'm going to zoom the main camera in and try to stay within my work zone here and show y'all what I'm doing, and this camera will capture it from this angle here, so sometimes when I'm working here you know you'll get some shots of how I'm doing this now, because this camera is not gonna, you know, if I try to get up and work like this, I'm gonna get in the way. So I'm gonna try to work like sideways, where I can see what I'm doing and you can watch from above with this camera. You know, I may have to move up a little and get more in frame here. Let's try this. That looks pretty good. And so what I've been doing here is I've been taking out underneath these muscles on the abdomen here, before I go into the abs. I want to decide how I'm going to flesh out this part of the body, because I think he's going to be, you know, the character wears some armor, but it's wild armor, meaning that it can shift with his forms like a wild shape of a druid. It's just very similar ability. They're natural creatures, so you know, we're going to assume that they have to wild shape to get to this ability. Now, as they get more powerful or go up in levels, it becomes much more like a shape change than a wild shape, because they take on abilities of what they change into. And since he's been a force of good in the world and he's done some things, he's been kind of chosen to move forward. And one of the abilities that they have in the feats for the shifters is that to wild shape into a form that has a celestial template. So he'd been doing the tiger for a while, and then he went into playing with a celestial tiger, and now he's taken it to a hybrid form, which he's based sort of on the Cardinal planar creatures, the Leonal. I think it's the one he looked at for basics, and we went from there. And so he's basically a Leonal, but a tiger, a celestial tiger being. And so I've cleared out a really good gap here before I put in his little ab area, and nice and flattened off. And these stylus tools are indispensable for this kind of work because it's so small. You know, the dental tools are good, but they cut and they poke and they make holes. These are very good at smoothing. If you get the right size ball in the area that you're working, you can really smooth out this Sculpey. I really like the polymer clay. Plus, if you get a gouge, you can work it like regular clay too. You just kind of, you know, dig in with a really sharp tip and it'll dig right out, and you know, you smooth it off with your fingers. We're not worried about saving a whole lot of the detail right now, just the structure. Don't want to move it around too much. It's pretty soft, and it stays soft for a little while after you've worked it. You know, if I've got a little small piece like this that I've been working in my hand and it gets warm, it gets real easy to work. It tears like regular clay. It pushes apart. I like that consistency. But then if I roll a little piece up and make a little ball out of it and let it sit for a little while, it gets really tough and hard. And so we can add to our sculpture by rolling out little pieces. And say I want to add a little muscle to the back of his leg. I haven't worked much on the back of his legs. I just kind of keep these pieces close by. Might sometimes keep one tucked to my hand. But we're going to get in here on the back of this leg, and we want to look at it. And, you know, I'm making little bitty squeeze these little pieces out, you know, like little layers of skin. And even that's too long, so we'll tear some more of that off, roll it in our ball. So you know, just got this little tiny piece here, if you can see that. And I'm just going to take and put that right behind the knee with my fingers. And you see I've kind of just laid it in there, right there. And I'm going to get one of my smallest tools. Pink one has a pretty nice tip on it. And I'm just going to kind of drag the edges of it out to the gluteus and to the back of the leg, inside the leg here. Basically push that clay into the other clay without pushing the whole thing around. Just slightly pushing the little pieces around, getting those seams to roll over into the other clay. This is probably going to be a little bit of a multi-part series. Now we're going to take this one here and we're going to make a little bit bigger indentions in the back here, a couple places, push this clay in a little bit. And some of this clay is going to get pushed up in and rolled out of that thigh. You can see as I roll, it pushes it up. Sometimes the best thing is the finger, because you can just feel the shape. Pieces on the front there. And I like this because I can really squeeze and hold on to the armature without touching the clay or damaging the clay, and I just push the thing around. It'll bend a little bit, but that's okay. Got a little hole right here in the frame of the head where I can stick this tiny little thing in, and I can bend the feet back straight wherever I need them to be. You know, I'll have to work on those later. Maybe make them a part of the base. Attach it straight to the base, pinning it to the base. So, thinking about making this and doing a silicone cast of it, and then making a resin mini. Haven't decided yet. We'll see how it turns out and how many pieces there are, or if I make pieces, or how I work all this. Now, I've just kind of gotten some nice shape going on there, and I've got a big gap in his belly. You can turn that so you can see those muscles kind of sticking out right there. I'm missing a whole lot. So we're going to go in now and roll me some clay off of this. Kind of just flatten it out with my fingers. You can use whatever you want. You could lay it down and use this right here and just done like this. What this is just a piece of parchment that I put on a piece of board I had. I mean, it's scrap, it doesn't matter, and it gives me something I can write on, mark on easy, and it shows, and it doesn't stick to the clay. The parchment's great for not sticking to the clay. And so I've just made me a little piece here, and I'm going to take it over to my tile non-stick surface and get a old X-Acto that's got a pretty good old blade in it. I'm going to chop me a couple of little pieces off of that. There's a little piece, whoop, went flying away. There's a little piece there. And there's another little piece there. Okay. Now, what we're doing is basically creating his abdomen muscles by putting that little piece across his middle section there. Right. Then we take our knife. I'm just going to kind of cut next to the body. We don't want to cut into the body, just want to cut next to the body. Push that little piece away. Alright. Do the same thing on the other side. Boom. It falls off. Okay, now we've got a major portion of his abs, at least the part that would show above a belt or anything. Let me get that in there. Okay, and I'll just work that with my tool. We're going to take the orange one. Pretty good tip on the orange one. And I'm just going to take and I'm going to push this in to what we've already got along the sides here. See if I can stay in frame. Okay. And we're going to come and push it down into his belt where it would go under his belt, across the front. Okay, and then we're going to come along that other side and push it in. Now, right up under here, we don't want to lose that line, so we're going to just kind of lightly push up in the center here to meet it. We don't want to lose it, we want to kind of enhance it with a little ridge. Okay? Now, from that same angle of that muscle there, we're going to go straight up and down, kind of at an angle towards the underneath his belly button down here. And then we're going to do kind of the same thing over here by just kind of slightly gouging in on that side. We're going to push this extra clay into his hips or into the center that we're going to make the abs. Okay? Now, you can roughly see the shape of abs forming there. I'm going to take my finger and just kind of smooth some of that. You can also use the smooth surface of the stylus, the bar, to do some of that. It's a nice tool for that. Now, we kind of started to get rid of our line there. So we're going to just kind of hint it back in. We don't want it deep, we don't want to cut, we just want to make it look like there's a separation of the muscles there. Not so much underneath here. We're going to save that for some little details I'll do. But right now we're going to make sure that this separates. And we have a straight, almost straight little humps here in the muscles. Now this tool's almost too big for this. So this one I would go to the pink to get the little tiny one. This little tiny piece here. And just kind of lightly draw down the middle of the abs. Use it to kind of smooth out and detail those. Now, we kind of detailed it so it looks like the abs appear in his. Keeping this thing in frame is becoming a task. See if you can see that. Created some little details that look like just the general shape of his abs. I mean, he'll probably be wearing armor over this, so but we just want to hint at this is what his underbody looks like. So, you know, I know that was upside down, so we'll give you a shot like this. Okay. The bulk of his legs are pretty good. The back of this leg needs some work. I don't know that any of you can see it in that angle, but like this, you can definitely see there's a big missing muscle underneath that leg. So we're going to get us that other little flat piece that we cut off, and we're going to start trying to add some depth to some other body parts. So I've just pushed that up into there, and I'm going to roll it out. I'm pushing pretty firmly into the model. I want it to adhere real well. I don't want any air gaps, so I'm just kind of spreading it out like peanut butter in a way, but keeping the bulk of it in one location. It's a little bit longer than what I wanted, but we'll just roll that over into the other hip since we're going to have to do those muscles soon anyway. So Clothing will cover 90% of that. Try not to worry too much there. But you definitely want your structure to look good before you start putting on accessories and weapons and that type of stuff. So all we're doing here is trying to make sure that it looks proportional to the size of your miniature. I'm just trying to push that clay around and get a good, solid, smooth shape all around that thigh. Thighs are not always easy to remember, but there are some techniques, especially if you draw and you've taken some courses on figures. I've only had a couple of drawing courses and some fine arts that I took. I did some graphic design, but I got into comic books before I got out of high school, and I even tried to get on with some comic book companies when I was younger, but my passion is really in character design, character creation, so probably should have been doing this a long time ago. And we're starting to get some shape into the back of that leg to where it looks more realistic. Like he's really got some hips and some bulk to his body. Still got a lot of buildup on the inside of that calf compared to this thigh. So push some of that around again. And I can't keep this in frame, so sorry about that, fellas. I may cut out some of this that y'all can't see. I get it upside down and going, and so what I'm trying to do here is trying to hint at where I may put something around his leg for maybe some hint of fur coming off of him when he changed shape into this, because see, his armor goes in with his form, but so I really want to point out that the shape of this form that he goes into. Kind of writing my own world at this time. It has some unique aspects, so I'm trying to capture that in the art and even the miniatures so that they get a good feel for what they're experiencing. You can see this there, bumped cameras. I've done everything wrong on this one, so trying to really give y'all a good idea of it. It's just a matter of looking at your muscle structure and looking at what you're doing with the clay, and you just want to lightly touch and push little bitty small amounts of clay around. This stuff is pretty firm, and it sets up good when you haven't messed with it for a minute. It gets cold. It's not as malleable, so I like that. But then also you get to a point where you want to save where you're at. You don't want to really lose any of this detail that you've worked on, things that you've built up. You can take and cook this, bake it at 275 for probably about 15 minutes at this rate right here. I think I may have a millimeter, 2 millimeters of thickness on this in some places. So 20 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so, it should bake in pretty solid, and then you can do some sanding or filing work and do some real, you know, if you wanted something a little harder, you can cut it with your knife. It's pretty good stuff, and I'll be doing probably several more on this. Let's see if we can get him in frame. And you can see what I got going on this front here. And around to the back. And that'll be part 1.